Do you want to know how I grew 170 pounds of sweet potatoes and the only way I'll grow them from now on? Well, stick around and I'll show you the 4 methods that I've used. This first method is in a straw bale. I did not prepare the straw bale in any way. I just pulled open a spot, put in a handful of compost, a slip, and I watered it. The straw decomposes really nicely, making a dark, gorgeous soil. This is one reason why I like doing the deep mulch gardening method. And I ended up with happy, happy little worms. Now this really isn't a good representation of this method for comparison because you are supposed to inoculate the bales. I'm not sure with what type of fertilizers, but I don't buy much in the form of fertilizers outside of my home. I produce most of my own, and I would try to do this again, maybe with some of my own inputs and inoculations. That would probably require a little research, but not bad for zero effort. This second method was directly in the ground. 3 months prior to planting in this area, it was just our yard, and we covered it with cardboard and wood chips. We're starting an area in another part of our property in a similar way, and I'll link a video showing that as we progress. We do not till our ground. When I planted the sweet potatoes, I just raked back the wood chips to expose the soil, and I planted the slips in the ground and placed the wood chips back around the plant. You don't want to plant directly in the wood chips. You need to make sure they're pulled back and you plant in the soil if you ever try this method. And to my surprise, they grew like crazy. However, they were hard to harvest. I had to do it by hand to prevent from breaking the sweet potatoes and damaging them in any way. The next area is in my original garden that I've tilled for years. I've added compost, peat, and all sorts of organic matter. We have red clay soil. So I thought by doing this, I would end up with nice, looser soil, but no, never did. So 2 years ago, prior to this planting, I stopped tilling. But I did expect this bed to be way easier to harvest, but it was not. However, I did grow a ton of potatoes. Sweet potato thieves. Pros and cons for me for growing sweet potatoes in the ground. The pros is I just put them in there. I didn't have to water them, and I grew a lot of sweet potatoes. The cons for growing sweet potatoes in the ground for me was they were hard to harvest, and they took up a lot of valuable garden space, and they were hard to harvest. These were grown last season, mostly in the ground, and we got approximately 97 pounds. Now this season, I chose to grow in containers and one raised bed, so let's see how that turned out. You grow sweet potatoes by a slip. You've heard me refer to this previously in the video. If you're new to gardening, a slip is a sprout from a sweet potato that you get by placing them in potting mix or water. I'll be starting my slips for next season's planting mid-January, so I'll link a video showing you how I do that. Of course, you can purchase slips from online or locally, but I prefer to get mine for free. I placed approximately 3 slips per container, and I topped with straw and soil. Then I topped everything with some worm castings that my worms made for me, and I occasionally fertilize with some compost teas that I make myself. You want to be sure not to over-fertilize with too much nitrogen, or you end up with a party of greens growing on top and nothing growing down in your pot. You want to keep your pots watered well, especially while the roots are forming. So now for the fun part. I'm not sure what variety of potato this is. My friend Christy gave it to me, but it is a purple sweet potato. Inspector Bo says they're pretty tasty. I grew 2 containers of the purple. They aren't as sweet as the orange, but they are loaded with antioxidants and we still enjoy them pretty good. They cook up kind of a dark purpley blue. They aren't real pretty on the plate, but they're very good. We like them. I like to reuse my soil. I'll add compost, rabbit poo, straw, and keep it covered for the winter. This is a orange variety of sweet potatoes, and again, I am not sure of the variety. It is the one that did well for me last year, and that's why I saved it and started to grow for this season. Now, as you can see, there's some eggshells in this container. Last winter, I did a compost method called bokashi because I could do it inside where it was warm. And apparently this pot had that in it. The raised bed also has it in it, and it seems like it works really well. We'll have to see how the raised bed looks. Anywhere that the vines touch the ground, they can root and start to grow sweet potatoes. So yay, little surprises. So fun. Sweet potatoes need 120 days and a lot of sunshine to grow. You'll see that some of these have split. That comes, I believe, from too much water all at once at a certain point where it's forming. So I believe that's what caused that. I'm really pleased with how many potatoes we got from just half of this bed. I think harvesting sweet potatoes is like finding buried treasure. It's so fun. I can get sucked into watching sweet potato harvest videos for hours. Am I the only one that any of y'all do that? Nice. Bo's going to help me get these weighed. I'm just going to wipe these off with a dry cloth. You do not want to wash your sweet potatoes before putting them into storage. When you store sweet potatoes, I just place mine in a cool, dark place, which is my basement. And I don't cure sweet potatoes. That is a method that a lot of people recommend and a lot of people like to do. I don't do that. I've found that if I wait 3 to 4 weeks and let the starches do whatever the starches do, they taste really good after about 3 to 4 weeks. I don't know why, but I don't cure them. Pros and cons for growing in containers. The cons: you have the initial cost to fill the containers, you have to water a little bit more, and I did use some compost teas because as you water more, you're washing out the nutrients over time. The pros: they were easy to harvest. They were easy to harvest, and they were easy to harvest. They were easy to harvest. Thanks for being here. My name's Loanna, and this is a little bit of homestead. Y'all come back and see me.